I first met Mr. Andy Pierce at a conference in Los Angeles during the summer of 2003. Andy told me that he and his wife, Sandy, had adopted 3 Chinese baby girls in the past few years, and that they were preparing to adopt their 4th child from China. They had already named the boy Hudson, even though they had not yet seen him. As a TV director at the ECF Global Communication Center in Monterey Park, California, I was very interested in knowing how the little 1-year-old Hudson would adjust to life in an American family. So after I got the approval from Andy, my colleagues and I brought our cameras to the Los Angeles International Airport so that we could start recording Hudson's new life in the United States. Sandy also brought their 3 Chinese daughters, Catherine, Sarah, and Leslie, to the airport to welcome Andy and their newly adopted boy, Hudson. Obviously, the new faces and the new place were not familiar to Hudson, but it was a pleasant surprise that Hudson was so accepting of his mom and his 3 Chinese sisters.
Mommy, Hudson thinks you like it.
I think so.
He was a bit scared of his American grandfather and grandmother. It seemed Hudson still needed more time to adjust to the new family. It was the first time Hudson sat in a car seat, and it was also the beginning of Hudson's American life. The Pierce family lives east of Los Angeles in the North San Gabriel Valley, a nice environment that is not far from Chinese markets, restaurants, shops, and other gathering places. It is a very good community. To welcome Andy and Hudson home, Sandy and the 3 girls decorated their home with balloons and posters for Hudson's arrival. Sandy knew Hudson loved to eat watermelon, so she cut a huge watermelon for their son to enjoy as soon as he arrived home. The 3 daughters came from Guangdong Province, China. 7-year-old Catherine and 5-year-old Sarah came from the city of Maoming, and 4-year-old Leslie came from the city of Huazhou. Before the adoption, the girls lived in a public orphanage in China, just like Hudson. The Pierces loved their 3 daughters as their own babies, so they would buy special gifts for them whenever they traveled. This time was no exception. Documents show that Hudson was born on July 18, 2002. 5 months after he was born, on December 23rd, he was found abandoned outside Tianhong Hotel in Taizhou City, Jiangsu Province. The local police brought him to the local public orphanage, and he was given the name Tai Hualiang at that time. The orphanage tried to find Hudson's relatives by posting an advertisement in the newspaper. However, there was no response, and he was made available for adoption.
Let's go, Catherine. Come on. Sarah, come on, babe. Sarah.
Needless to say, that was a very exciting day in the Pierce household. But the evening was coming to an end, and the girls had to get ready for bed and get back to their regular routine. Part of their routine, as with every night, was getting into bed and saying their nightly prayers. Andy and Sandy are both Christians, so that night, Sandy prayed together with her 3 daughters to give thanks to the Lord for the safe arrival of Andy and Hudson.
Dear God, thank you for this day, and I pray that Hudson will grow up to be a good boy, and thank you for this day, and I pray that Hudson will sleep good tonight.
Hudson, however, was still adjusting to a new time zone, so winding down might have taken a little bit longer than expected. Some people say that adopting a child is like pulling out a plant with roots from a familiar place and moving it to new soil. There are many challenges, especially for little children, and some of these changes are not easy. That evening, as we left the Pierce home, we could hear Hudson crying. I knew that Hudson's hardest time in the U.S. would be his first night. On the third day after he arrived in the U.S., Hudson had his first appointment with a pediatrician for a checkup. This was the first time Hudson visited a pediatrician. So Sandy brought Hudson's complete immunization history and needed to fill out different forms to make sure the doctor got the complete health record of Hudson. After the doctor did a check of Hudson's overall health and reviewed his immunization records from China, she told the nurse to give Hudson 3 shots recommended for children in the U.S. These shots were quite a challenge for the little 1-year-old.
I'm sorry, baby. That one stings a little bit. There you go.
All Chinese orphans have a health checkup in China before they are adopted. Andy and Sandy's 3 daughters also met with the same procedures for their adoptions. Every one of them also got a full record of immunization. In the 1990s, the Chinese government began allowing foreigners to adopt Chinese orphans. At the same time, they set up a series of regulations and procedures for the adoption process. In order to adopt a Chinese orphan in the United States, there are regulations that need to be fulfilled as well. These regulations require that, for example, couples need to have a safe home, good parenting skills, good health, adequate and stable income, and no criminal record. They must report the details to both the American Embassy and the Chinese Center for Adoption Affairs for approval, and need to make a vow that they would never give up the adopted children. The entire adoption process usually takes 10 to 15 months.
Sandy and I were happy with our 3 daughters and very thankful to have 3 healthy girls, but I think in my heart I had a longing to have a son. And Sandy was out walking one day and she really felt God prompting her to talk to me about adopting a son.
And then I was listening to Focus on the Family, which is Dr. James Dobson. He's a radio show, which is on every morning, and I listen to it when I walk. And it was all about his new book, which is entitled Bringing Up Boys. And I was listening to this book, and I should have been scared away, because it was all about how boys are difficult, and they're jumpy, and they run around. And I was so convicted out on my walk that we needed to go to China, we needed to start the process all over again, and we needed to bring home a little boy.
And so I left for Nanjing on August 24th to adopt Hudson. The babies were brought from the orphanage, and there were actually 2 boys in our group of 10 families, 2 boys and 8 girls from the city of Taizhou. They brought the babies to us and put Hudson in my arms, and it was just an incredible experience. And he was just a happy boy, and I was so amazed that he was so big and very, very healthy. And so I just thanked God that night for such a wonderful gift to be able to receive a son after 3 daughters.
Andy and Sandy both loved sports since they were young. After he graduated from UCLA, Andy taught mathematics in high school and was a softball coach. Sandy graduated from UC Santa Barbara and was a high school English teacher and also a softball coach. They met each other at a high school softball game, fell in love, and got married. Later, Sandy became the head softball coach at UC Santa Barbara and then at Stanford University, and Andy became one of Sandy's assistant coaches.
We started to want to have children, and we just weren't getting pregnant, and there wasn't any real reason why we weren't getting pregnant. We just didn't. And instead of doing the fertility route, we just decided that adoption was something that we would really want to look into. And we were living in Redwood City at the time. And I'll never forget the day my neighbor came across the street with a little card, and she said, "Just so happens that my dentist's wife happens to run an adoption agency. Why don't you go talk to her?" And that really started us on the process.
After patiently waiting and praying, they finally received word from the adoption agency that a baby girl in China was selected for them in 1996. That's when the Pierce family began their relationship with China, and their lives were in for a big change.
When we decided that we were going to adopt, I think the biggest question for me was, what were we going to do? Because I really liked my job at Stanford. I really liked coaching. I liked being on campus. It was a really fun job for me, and I had done it for about 5 years, being a head coach. And it really was a hard decision for me, because I thought, when I coach, am I going to take this child with me on the road? When you coach, I was gone. Gosh, I was gone so much. I traveled a lot, and I was always either coaching or recruiting or playing in a different city. And so when I thought about having this little baby, it was so hard for me to think about being gone all the time, because I felt like God wanted me to bring home this little baby from around the world, and for me to be the mother. And if the mother was gone all the time, then what kind of mother could I be?
So when we brought our first daughter home from China, Sandy felt a strong desire from God to be a full-time mom, and we knew we had to leave the San Francisco area because it's so expensive to live there. And we moved to Lubbock, Texas, and began our life there, and really enjoyed having one child after 6 years of marriage. It was such a blessing to be parents after such a long wait. And so we had many Chinese friends in Lubbock, Texas, and that's when we began to get involved with ministry to international students.
Currently, Andy is the Area Director for International Students Service in Los Angeles. This organization seeks to help international students with their physical, social, and spiritual needs by introducing them to friendly Americans and providing a variety of friendship opportunities, activities, holiday parties, and group meetings. Shortly after Hudson arrived in America, it was the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival. It was the perfect time for Andy and Sandy to introduce their new baby to their friends. Many of the Chinese students that Andy worked with met at their weekly church fellowship and both celebrated the festival and met Hudson for the first time.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this evening that we have to celebrate the Moon Festival. We just thank you for so many friends, and we just pray for a great evening of fellowship and celebration. Thank you so much for this great food that's been provided. In Jesus' name, amen.
Even though Sandy was the head softball coach at one of the most well-known universities in the United States, and Andy was her assistant, they have a marriage that is built on helping and serving each other regardless of their roles or titles. While Andy leads meetings with the international students, Sandy takes care of all the children of the participants in another room so that the adult conversation would not be disrupted and the children can still have fun.
Guys, be careful. You feel better?
Growing up, Sandy was an active and athletic young girl. She was a cheerleader, played softball and volleyball in elementary, high school, and all throughout her college years. Becoming a full-time mother was something she did not expect to do.
Where I really was thinking about it a lot and thinking, do I want to be home? What is it going to be like to be home? I had never really been around a baby. I didn't know if I would like it, or if it would be really boring, or I just didn't know. And so I just really was thinking about it a lot and really praying and trying to figure it out, but it was something that I didn't know what was going to happen, so I couldn't really make the decision. I think it was about 3 months before we went to China to adopt. I really had a strong sense from God that I needed to be home, that again, He was giving me this little baby and I was going to be the mother, and that I needed to leave my job at Stanford and to be home and just to trust God that this would be the right move for our family. And this really made a big difference for us, because what happened was, at the time, I was making a lot more money in my job than my husband was. And so this meant we couldn't live in the San Francisco area anymore. It was much too expensive. And so my husband needed to find a new job that he was going to be able to to work and let us be home at the same time. And so that led us to Texas. And it was a big, big decision. It was a big family decision to make. And it was really, really hard. And I look at it now, what is that? That's almost 9-10 years ago. And I'm just so thankful that I am home, and so thankful that I went through that time.
Christmas Eve 2003 was an important and exciting time in the Pierce home. I had not seen Hudson for 2 months, and the first thing that amazed me was that he had learned how to walk.
Big table and those kind of things, or you want to do that last? Okay.
Sandy and Andy have always loved the holidays, so it was important that their children experience the happiness and joy of Christmas in America. They had different kinds of Christmas gifts, food, ornaments, and games for all the children to enjoy. The whole family was filled with love and happiness together. When Sandy lit the fireplace, it warmed the hearts of the 4 children and their whole family. The warmth of this fire united their family with the rest of the world as they celebrated Christmas together. Not long after the Christmas holidays, it was time to celebrate Chinese New Year. Mr. Zhong Jianhua, the Consul General of the People's Republic of China in Los Angeles, invited some American families who adopted Chinese children to a party held at his home in Los Angeles. The Pierce family was happy to be included. Mr. Zhong and his wife prepared many different Chinese programs for the guests, including Chinese dances and songs, games, and a Chinese buffet. He wanted the children and their families to enjoy the happiness of this festival, even though they are not living in China. Mr. Zhong Jianhua thinks highly of the American parents who have adopted children from China because they not only give the children a better chance at life, but also build better relations between China and America.
就通过这个收养的关系的建立，把这些家庭和中国连在一起，成为我们中美交流、中美友好的这么一个纽带。
Really, as soon as our children understand just a little bit about life, then we tell them that they were born in China and they were adopted into our family, and to be happy and to understand that that is very important and a special identity in our family. Each year I'm going to plan to bring one of my children with me to China, helping our children to understand what it means to be Chinese and what the great heritage that means for them, but also to help them understand what it means to be American as well. So it's exciting to have 2 cultures represented, Chinese and American, in our family.
Andy became the Los Angeles director of the International Student Services. One of the reasons he took on this position was so that his children would be able to be connected with Chinese people. Many of the Chinese students became good friends with Andy. Even after graduating, some of them maintain a relationship with him. Because Andy is an experienced tennis coach, he spends time every week teaching his Chinese friends to play tennis. Time flies. Hudson has already been in the U.S. for almost 2 years now. On a spring day in 2005, the Pierces invited some Chinese students and friends for a gathering at their home.
Are they coming?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Coming. Coming.
How long?
Whoa, coming.
What?
Whoa, coming.
They're coming?
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Coming.
Really?
we too early or too late?
No, right on time.
I was very surprised and delighted to see Hudson talk to the guests in English. I could tell that he was a happy boy, part of a loving and godly family.
Thank you.
And these are the ones with the suffixes. Remember, we have the root word.
As parents of these 4 Chinese children, Sandy and Andy care about their education very much. During the weekdays, when Andy is at work, their home becomes a classroom. As an experienced teacher, Sandy designs a curriculum appropriate for each daughter's age and needs.
You mean this one?
So which
Little Hudson really enjoys playing with his choo-choo train by himself, while his sisters are in the middle of their lessons.
So Monday, Andy is off, and so we have something called Family Day. And on Family Day, we usually either go to the beach or visit our grandparents, or maybe Andy takes the girls to play tennis and we just have fun at home or something like that. But it's a family day where Andy doesn't work and we don't work and we just have fun. Hudson really plays a lot with the girls. He really likes to play with them and just kind of does everything else that we all do. So if we're outside, he's outside or running around or playing. But he plays a lot more. He plays a lot more independently now, where he plays with his trains or he reads books or he plays in his room or something like that. Okay. Ready? You got it? You gonna hold on?
Andy and Sandy try to encourage their children to use and develop creative skills in their daily life. On this visit to the Pierce home, the 3 little girls found a lizard in their neighbor's backyard. It's not just a funny little animal for the children. It was also a good chance for Sandy to teach a science lesson to the kids.
You guys go fill this up.
I think you're sending me.
What do you think, buddy? Did you see
I
him?
touched him, Mommy. I touched him.
Ew.
I touched him on
He's
his
fat.
back. She tried to get him.
Let Hudson have a chance.
Okay, Hudson. I'll put it in. I'll put it in. Then
Golly, do we have to do this? This is kind of Daddy's job.
he's slipping
Okay,
down.
go on in, buddy. Yeah, close it so
It's
he can't get
funny.
over it. He's going, man, I can't believe this happened to me. Okay, put him on the table. I really do feel like God has a really special plan for Hudson, though I don't know what it is. And it comes with great responsibility for Andy and I to raise him in a way that is pleasing to God, to teach him the things, the morals and values that would be pleasing to God and not pleasing of the world, but pleasing for whatever he will be doing.
Wait, one more spot.
In most cases, adopted children have no clue about their past. Some parents leave only a note on the child's clothing. The name and exact date of birth are assigned later by the orphanage. As parents, Sandy and Andy understand the feelings of this loss, so they collected all the pictures and information for each of their children and created a photo album for each child. They wanted each of their kids to learn about their past and know that they are not any different than children their age. When we started the adoption process, we had an amazing social worker who really talked with us a lot about the memories that we will have for our children. And we can't go back to birth for them, and we can't answer the questions that they really want to know about who is their birth mother and where did they really come from. She just really advised us to take lots and lots of pictures and really write a journal and remember everything possible. For each of our children, we kept a journal. We took lots and lots of pictures, and they loved to sit down and look at these books. They loved to sit with us, and they remember the times they were crying. They remember the times that they were doing all these funny things just from the photos in these books. So they're really precious and special to us. People say every child is beautiful if they have love from others. Sandy and Andy decided to adopt Chinese children because they both love children very much and were not able to have biological children. They wanted their children to experience love from parents and siblings, to receive good education, and to enjoy healthy relationships with other people. Though Sandy gave up many things to raise her children full-time, she is satisfied and is grateful for her children. Her dreams of becoming a mother have come true.
That was such an amazing time to know that my dream of being a mother was going to be coming true, and it was so what I longed for, and just the pain of so wanting to be a mother, and it's such a normal thing, but for some reason we weren't able to do that. But through this amazing gift of adoption, that we were going to be able to form a family, and I'm just forever grateful for that.
Hudson will turn 3 in July 2005. The Pierces have always been protective of Hudson being their youngest child. Sandy and Andy often tell their son that he is from China. I don't know if Hudson knows what China means yet, but I'm glad to see that he knows how to say these words in English. I trust that he will learn what these words will mean in the future.
I'm from China. China. I see China. Choo-choo train. I see choo-choo train. China.